Hello, guys, and welcome to this edition of Woman to Woman. I am your host, Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker. I want to welcome you again here as you join me for another episode in season 5 of Woman to Woman. For those of you that have been rocking with me, thank you for coming back. And for those that are here, just happen to stumble up on this podcast and you're new, go ahead and make sure that you subscribe and download. And welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad to have you. Today, we're going to talk about 3 signs that you have unresolved trauma. 3 signs that you have unresolved trauma. And the only thing about having unresolved trauma is that we continue to make decisions based upon our trauma. Trauma tends to have us stuck in an area or in a cycle or a pattern of life that continues to yield us results that may not necessarily line up with our goals or our life's aspirations. And sometimes we get so comfortable in that dysfunction that we begin to learn how to function in it, so to speak. So we begin to create a life around the traumas that we have. And so nonetheless, we all have some form of trauma or another. Let me just say that right now. We all have some form of trauma, whether it's a physical trauma, an emotional trauma, spiritual trauma, whatever that looks like for you. It's good to know whether or not we're operating or still have traumas that are not resolved. Many of us, we get over one hurdle in our life and we say that we're healed and we say that it's resolved and we're okay. But as I go through the process of exposing myself, so to speak, exposing my traumas and exposing those secret compartments of my life, one thing that I find is that when I uncover one area, there's always something more hidden in the background of that. So I believe that personal development, and just like personal development, our professional development, I think it comes in layers, in that it is very comprehensive and very complex. And I don't believe that there's just one thing that we heal and then we're okay. I believe that this is a lifelong process, which is why I believe, it's important that we renew our mind daily and that we stay spiritually connected to our Creator. And so it's important. And even with the things that we're dealing with now in life, over the past 3 weeks, life has came at me so hard that I sometimes felt stuck in an area. And even though I get up and press, I wasn't being as productive. I wasn't being as motivated or energetic, so to speak. So I didn't get as much done. I didn't feel like I was really producing in a manner that or up to a standard that I have established for myself. And much of that is because when the pressures hit so hard, when you have unresolved trauma or unresolved issues in your life, you begin to convert or revert back to the things which are familiar to you. And so I want to talk about those things because if you follow me on my different platforms, if you've watched me over the past, say, 2.5, 3 months, you can see a pattern of behaviors that I begin to show and begin to exhibit throughout the platforms. You can see a pattern of my personal issues that I begin to share in the forefront of my audience, So it's important to know from the center in which you're operating from. It's important to know that the behaviors that you have are not just behaviors because that's who you are. Everything has a root cause. Until we're able to identify and to deal with the root cause of those issues, then the cycle begins to repeat itself. And so it's easy to make excuses for why we do what we do, or why we think how we think, or how we feel the way we feel. And those things can be misleading in so many ways. I could sit here today and just say, I give up, I fold in the towel. But in reality, all that is just a distraction, or just one of the construction blocks that you meet along the way when you're trying, or when you're set out to accomplish something great. This road is not easy. Anything that you set out to accomplish, to do good in life, it's not just going to come easy. It's not going to come without its share of cost. And so when you look at all the greats along the way who have mapped out a pattern for you, whether you're a Christian person and it's your religion, where you're reading about the stories of Peter and Paul, and from the creation of Genesis and to Job, and in the book of Proverbs and the book of Psalms about David. You know, when you're reading about all these things, it's easy to fantasize that even from creation, people had it easy. But even the greats of our times, like say those that I've listened to, like Les Brown, you know, Eric Thomas, when I look at the past, Jim Rohn and Dr. Miles Monroe, when I look at all of those people and I study their platforms and I'm reading their books and I'm listening to those motivational speakers, say like Steve Harvey and Denzel Washington, who we hear most nowadays, that are becoming more popular and dealing with the issues that we're dealing with in our lives today, none of them had it easy. Many of them had so many struggles and so many identity crises and traumas and issues that they had to overcome. And sure, they're in the limelight, or sure they lived in the limelight, or sure we read about them in our biblical text. However, it was not easy. They are real people. They were real people with real issues, real emotions, and they had to overcome some things. No different than us. No different than us. So there is traumas that we have, that sometimes we think that we're over it, and we're really not. And so I want to talk to you about 3 ways you can tell whether or not you have unresolved issues or unresolved traumas. And so the number one way to tell that you have unresolved trauma and that you're functioning around that trauma is that you are negative. Negativity is a clear, fine, sure tell-all identifier or factor that you have unresolved trauma. And I've seen it, and I know that you see it, in that you've heard it throughout your social media pages. We wonder why people are so negative, or why people gravitate toward negative content, negative posts, negative platforms. Is because we are functioning around unresolved trauma. And so we connect to those things which are familiar to us. Now, sure, some things sound good in the beginning, but a repeated cycle of negativity, talk that is negative, talk that minimizes one person in order to esteem another, we know that that person is operating and functioning through unresolved trauma. And I've seen it so many times, business people that could potentially be great and successful, yet they're operating through a place of negativity and bitterness and words that are harmful and manipulative. And it's just an identifier, not of who they are, but an identifier that they have trauma that they're functioning through that is unresolved. And so it breeds that negativity, it breeds that harmful speech or that harmful demeanor, who minimizes everything around them so that they can esteem higher, or in a sense continue to suppress the trauma that's trying to surface. So it's a way of keeping the spotlight off of them and on something else. But I have always said, and I believe, that what's in you will eventually come out. And so when people show you who they are, when they show you that this is what they are about, believe them. And you can either stay there in that toxic space, in that space of negativity, and continue to be the headline of their abuse and the things that they're putting out there, or you can create space between you and learn from and do what you need to do to keep yourself at a distance that you're not the target of that harm or that toxicity as you're trying to learn and focus in these particular areas and from these particular people. Now, one of the things about me, I believe in supporting small businesses. But one of the things that turn me off from potentially successful business owners, or from buying from certain business owners, or being connected to certain business owner, is that they're operating through the space of negativity. Negativity is not norm. It's what we gravitate to when we don't deal with the traumas and resolve the traumas and identify the traumas in our lives. And so I'm just turned off by people who are negative. I don't care how good your product is. I don't care how good you can speak and how good your platform is and how many followers you have. When you're negative, I don't gravitate to that. That's something that I'm moving away from. It's showing, especially when you're negative and you have a negative, nasty attitude behind that. You know, we don't want that. And so when you see that, that's an identifier. Not that they're not good people or they have can be potentially great, but just that they're operating through traumas that are unresolved. And it's a sure tell-all factor. Number two, a way to identify that you're operating with through the lens of unresolved traumas is that you tend to blame. People who blame everybody else for why they don't have what they have, or why they don't feel happy, or why they can't get ahead. Unresolved trauma. This is a condition of the mind that keeps you from assuming the responsibility for why you have not accomplished the things that you have set out to accomplish, or to attain those things that you set out to attain, or to reach those goals that you set to reach. We blame. It's a state of mediocrity. It's a safe haven for so many people to try to project that responsibility or that blame onto somebody else and not assume responsibility for ourselves. Now, I could always say, I could blame my kids for why I haven't did certain things in my life. I can blame my job for the reason I haven't secured some of the positions that I would like to secure in my career. I can blame my spouse for my nasty attitude or for why I don't treat him the way that he deserves to be treated. I can blame my friends for the reason that this didn't work out or the reason we didn't get to do this or that. Blame. Unresolved trauma, that's all it is. We can blame what happened for why we don't have what we should have, or why we're not in a place that we know that we are capable of being. So we operate in that place of hiding behind the shadows of what happened, or what or an event that occurred. You know, we get stuck. We get stuck, and with that blame comes the excuses. That's all it is. It comes to excuses. So when you see people who always blame, or who always have excuses for why they have or why they don't have or why they don't do or why they did what they did, you can see that they're operating from a space of unresolved trauma. And I know you know these people. You know these people who blame their business for not being successful because people are not buying. They don't assume the responsibility that maybe the people aren't buying because you aren't targeting the people who need your product, or the people who could benefit most from your product. Maybe it is that you haven't taken the courses that you need to take, or maybe you're not sitting and connecting with a mentor or a coach to help you get to the place to where you can attract those people who can benefit by what you are offer. And so you see these people, they sit back and they blame, and they're angry and they're negative, and they continue to make excuses for why they don't. And they're angry at the people that seems like they do. And so you have unresolved traumas, and you would think, what does that have to do with unresolved trauma? Well, there's something in you that makes you feel like you're entitled in some way or another. There's something in you that you want to take shortcuts and take an easy route, or think that because you've been so much and that you have this gift, that people are automatically going to be attracted to you and buy from you and to worship you, so to speak, when that's not the case. There's something that we can all do, or something that we can all learn to help put us in a better space. But we have to get over ourselves. We have to put ourselves in a position to be great. And much of that is dealing with the traumas and the unresolved issues that we already have. Otherwise, as we move forward and we take on those next levels in our life, we're just packing on that stuff on top of the things that we have unresolved. One thing that I've always said is that you cannot escape you. There is no way you can escape you. You goes with you no matter where you go. You cannot escape you. And so when there's issues in us that we're holding secret and we don't expose, it drags on with us throughout whatever it is that we set out to do in life. Much of it causes us issues in future relationships. It causes us issues in future decisions. And it's hard to drag that baggage into a life that we are successful in portraying an image to other people. We are influencers. We influence people around us. People look at us, they watch us. They need to see the human in us, but at the same time, we need to know our limitations and be able to identify our traumas and be able to function when the triggers begin to surface. And so we can't go through life and go to certain levels of success continuing to blame and make excuses. I could make an excuse and to blame many things of why it's been 3 weeks since I've showed up on the platform. I can blame and make many excuses about why my marriage is all of a sudden on the rocks and it's struggling. I can make many excuses and blame why the relationship between me and my children is not as healthy or as strong as I desire it to be. I can make many excuses and to blame many factors of why over the past 3.5 months, my business is struggling financially. However, that's not going to help anything. It's not helping me. It's not helping my business. It's not helping the influence that I have for you guys that come here and you're listening to me. It's not helping anything. What I find is that I continue to expose, I continue to release, I continue to resolve and deal with the issues as they surface. And I continue to get up and press toward those things that I have set out to press toward. If I throw in the towel, that's the cycle that leads me right back to my trauma and making decisions as it relates to my trauma. So, and number 3, the 3 tell-all sign that you are operating in unresolved trauma is that you have or that you exhibit a pattern of promiscuous harmful behaviors. And I know that you see it. You see good people with these pattern behaviors that are potentially harmful. And no, I'm not just talking about sexual promiscuity. What about those patterns of eating, overeating, that leads us to being overweight? Those patterns of the different sexual partners that we begin to give ourselves to because we have unresolved traumas from the past that we're looking for love in a way that it is not healthy. What about those patterns of the different partners that we're having children with? What about those patterns of spending, overspending, to where we find ourselves in a situation of debt that we can't seem to crawl out of? Those pattern behaviors are harmful. Uncontrolled pattern behaviors stem from a root of unresolved trauma. So if we always find ourselves in a position to where we're reverting back or converting back to these pattern behaviors that are harmful, drinking, consuming the alcohols, addictions to where we're consuming the substance and the drugs and different things like these are pattern behaviors. They're harmful to us. Many of it is because we're trying to suppress some of the unresolved trauma that we're trying to keep secret in our lives. I don't know anybody that just wants to continue these harmful pattern behaviors just because that's the life that they chose or really wants or desires for their lives. But I do know that this is the situation that we get in because we have issues or traumas that we continue to have to face that we desire to suppress. Issues of abandonment, issues of not feeling like we're good enough. Maybe we didn't get mom and dad's attention. Maybe dad left us. Maybe the woman or the man that we love, maybe they left us for somebody else. Maybe we were adopted. We don't know who we can identify with. Maybe there was, we were raped. Maybe we were molested. Maybe we were physically abused. Maybe we didn't have enough to eat coming up. Maybe people didn't believe us when we told them about an event or something that happened. Maybe we've been overlooked because the color of our skin. Maybe we're too dark, too light. Maybe we're a woman. Maybe we're a man. So many issues. Maybe we've been overlooked. Maybe we always feel like we have to be compared to our sibling or to a cousin and that we're just not good enough. Maybe dad left us, or maybe dad had a pattern of behavior. He wasn't around and had kids all over town. So now we're going to go do that. Maybe he wasn't in our life. Maybe he died. Maybe we experienced or witnessed a suicide. So much trauma that is the root cause somewhere of why we exercise or why we exhibit these pattern, promiscuous, harmful behaviors in our lives. And it is traumatic. It's traumatic just living this cycle of feeling like we have to do this to feel wanted, or do this to feel desired, or do this to feel accepted. And we deceive ourselves because the trauma which is servicing in our lives, instead of us getting in a place to where we can work with a mentor or work with a coach or to work with a counselor or to work with a doctor to resolve these issues, we make excuses for it. We're negative about it. We blame other people. And these pattern of cycles of behavior become so familiar to us that we begin to function in our dysfunction. We begin to create a life around the traumas in our life instead of dealing with the traumas, that we continue to pile things on top of it, and it begins to surface and resurface in our life as we reach the different levels of success. And so, women, if that's you today, if you're listening to me and you can relate, you're showing these 3 signs. The more of these 3 signs that you can relate to and that you're showing in your own life, shows the level of trauma that you have that is unresolved. And it's not going to resolve itself. Ignoring it is not going to resolve itself. It's not. There's so much that I've had to do coming out in the platform in 2020 publicly, like I have, there's so much that I've had exposed of myself. There's so many more layers of my life that begins to surface every day. And I have to decide how I'm going to deal with it. I have to decide if I'm going to continue to allow this trauma to keep me suppressed and keep me bitter or keep me angry, or am I going to get out here and do what it takes to heal so that I can reach the levels of success that is created for me? There's no way around it. Hurting people hurt people. Hurting people who hurt people have unresolved trauma. It's as simple as that. It's not that they're trying to hurt you. It's not that they don't love you. It's not that they're not capable of being all that they can be. It's that they have suppressed and kept hitting the traumas. And maybe sometimes the traumas are so deep and buried so deep that they don't even realize that there is trauma, or they don't realize why they're functioning the way they function. They need help. We need help. You need help. I need help. We cannot get where we're going or where we desire to be in life solo. It just does not work that way. We have to do what it takes to peel back the layers of the traumatic events, of the irrational conditioning in our minds. We have to be willing that when we come up against a roadblock or a detour along the way, we have to be willing to take the road less traveled. We have to be willing to set and establish healthier boundaries. We have to be willing to do the work on our minds and do the work in our lives that it takes so that we can be in a better place. I'm curious to know, what tell-all signs do you recognize that someone is operating through unresolved traumas or issues? Have you noticed some different from the 3 that I've shared here with you today? I'd like for you to share those with me. Send me an email at thewoman-to-woman-podcast@gmail.com. Again, send me an email to share with me signs that you recognize of people who are operating through unresolved traumas at thewoman-to-woman-podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, I am your host, Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker. It's been great.